Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Will from Dovah Builds, and today we will be looking at a character that I've been working on for quite some time. This is the Yokudan. With his deadly skill in combat and unbreakable spirit, this Redguard warrior pays homage to his ancestors and fierce nomads of the past. His intimidating aesthetic and intense gameplay is perfect for anyone wanting to dive right in and explore the vast wilds that Skyrim has to offer. Also, remember that, as always, everything you see here today was recorded and built on legendary difficulty. For race, I went with Redguard, as this is, after all, the descendants of what is known as the Yokudans. This means that I did get a boost to some of the warrior skills that we will be using, including one-handed and block, and also that we'll have access to the Adrenaline Rush racial ability. The stat spread for this character will go as follows: health at 440, stamina at 150, and Magicka at 220. We'll need Magicka for casting spells, stamina for throwing power attacks, and health to keep us alive. Moving on to the standing stones, of course you're going to want to take the warrior stone for leveling, but once your skills are leveling at a nice pace and you can afford to risk it, you're going to want to go ahead and grab the Lord Stone, which grants the player 50 extra points in armor rating and makes you 50% more resistant to magical attacks. This will come in handy due to the relatively low armor rating of Dwarven armor and the fact that you're not going to be able to benefit from the matching set perks. For powers and effects, you're going to want to take a few really important ones. First off, as a Redguard, you will have access to Adrenaline Rush from level 1. This allows stamina to regenerate 10% faster once a day. This can come in handy for bashing enemies and throwing power attacks in the thick of battle. You're also going to want to take Mora's Boon, which will restore your health, stamina, and Magicka instantaneously once a day for up to 1,000 points. You can also take Companion's Insight, which makes your shouts, attacks, and destruction spells do no damage to your followers while in combat. Force without effort will allow you to reduce your staggering by 25% while increasing your foe staggering by 25%. Here is your backstory for role-playing purposes. Growing up in Hammerfell, the Yokudan was raised by his parents, who belonged to a tribe of warriors. They called themselves the Guard of the Yokudans. Everyone in the tribe was trained from a young age in the art of war and combat. The Yokudan quickly became one of the strongest members of his tribe and would pass all the trials put in front of him with ease. On the eve of his 40th birthday, the Yokudan would have to pass the final test to be accepted as leader of his tribe. He'd have to track down and kill a giant scorpion. The tracking part wasn't that hard, considering the Alakir Desert was absolutely full of deadly creatures, including the scorpion he was after. However, the creature could easily kill the Yokudan with a simple sting. That didn't scare the Yokudan as much as it worried his elderly parents, so the man set off to hunt down his prey. After a week of traveling the desert, he came across exactly what he was looking for. The battle was fierce, the scorpion relentlessly stabbing at the Yokudan. In the end, the Yokudan would drive his blade into the brain of the scorpion, killing it instantly. Its body slumped to the ground, and the Yokudan would take the tail as a symbol of his victory. Upon arriving back home, he would notice something wasn't quite right. There wasn't anyone there. Only the remains of a tribe who, until now, had only moved around during times of battle. Inside one of the huts, he discovered a note that had been written by his parents. The note simply says, "Find us in the land of the Nords, Skyrim." The journey would be long and dangerous, but the Yokudan would be determined to find his tribe and would set out. He sailed to Cyrodiil and made his way to Bruma, first in order to stock up on any supplies before crossing the mountains into Skyrim. He would spend a few months there to gather his bearings and to gather coin for the trip. This is where he'll be captured by the Imperials and thrown into the back of a carriage and carted to Helgen. The factions for this build will go as follows. The main quest line. The Yokudan will feel like it's his destiny to fulfill the role of Dragonborn. After all, the gods allowed him to live rather than be executed at Helgen, And who is he to deny a gift from the deities that he worships and those who saved him? This will lead straight into the Dragonborn DLC, allowing him to defeat Mirak and become the last true Dragonborn. The College of Winterhold is another great faction for the Yokudan. Due to the Yokudan's take to alteration, he will intend to seek out a way to enhance his abilities with the School of Magic. This will lead him to the College of Winterhold, where he will discover the Eye of Magnus and eventually become Archmage. The Companions questline. Optionally, you can join the Companions. This will give the Yokudan a solid connection with a guild of fighters and warriors to help him enhance his skills with a blade, shield, and heavy armor. This will also give access to the werewolf form. However, I chose to cure this as the Yokudan would feel that this power is dishonorable at best and at worst is downright turning his back on his ancestors' legacy. As always, if you can justify it, then you don't have to cure it, but I just chose to do so. Another great faction is the Dawn Guard. It's completely optional, but this would be a great fit for the Yokudan as he will despise vampires and the evil they bring to Tamriel. However, I did feel like this would have been overkill for the character, and it would have taken me way too long to get this video made. There's no reason not to join, however, so do so if you wish. Moving on to spells, shouts, and combat style. All of the spells in this build fell under the alteration skill tree. I used Ebony Flesh, Paralysis, and Paralysis Rune. Ebony Flesh was to keep my character alive during combat and boost the overall armor rating. This would help basically throughout the entire playthrough up until the end, and even at the end it would help push us past the armor cap. Paralysis would be basically my way of dealing with enemies that I couldn't handle, such as lurkers and lurker sentinels. These would give me like lots of problems during the playthrough. I died several times to lurkers one-shotting me in the early stage. So that's why I picked up Paralyze. It was already in the alteration skill tree anyway, and I figured that it would probably be useful. I also went and picked up Paralysis Rune. That's to deal with multiple enemies at a time in order to get a breather from combat as a whole. Basically, you can use this by spraying it on the ground in front of a bunch of enemies, or placing it on the ground in front of a bunch of enemies, causing them all to fall to the ground, and then you can retreat and heal yourself up with potions or spells. For shouts, I would suggest going ahead and getting all the words for Unrelenting Force, Whirlwind Sprint, and Dragon Rend. For combat style, I would just start every encounter off with a dual cast Ebony Flesh, and then switch over to Paralysis and cast it on your enemies. Once everyone's paralyzed, switch over to your Scimitar and the Ethereal Shield and take enemies on one at a time. If they start overwhelming you, then simply bash them to catch your breath and give you time to equip any spells that you may need to turn the tide of battle. For skills, I went ahead and took one-handed. I went with Armsman, 5 of 5. I went with Fighting Stance. I went with Critical Charge, and finally Savage Strike. I would also go and take Speech, take 5 ranks of Haggling, Allure, and then Merchant. In the Alteration skill, you take Novice Alteration, Apprentice Alteration, Adept Alteration, Stability, Magic Resistance 3 of 3, Advanced Alteration, and Dual Casting. Go ahead and take 5 ranks of Enchanter, Insightful Enchanter, Corpus Enchanter, and Extra Effect. For smithing, I took Steelsmithing, Arcane Blacksmith, and then I also went ahead and took Dwarven Smithing to improve our armor rating. For heavy armor, you'll only want to put 2 ranks into Juggernaut, you'll want to go all the way up the left branch until you reach the top in conditioning to make yourself faster. In block, I took 5 ranks of shield wall. I took quick reflexes. And then I went all the way up the left branch until I reached the charging perk, the shield charge perk. Moving on to the weapons and gear for this build. For the weapon, you're going to want to take a scimitar and smith it up and enchant it. Then for the gear, start with an adventurer's backpack from the Creation Club, the ethereal shield, an Alakir hood, a silver necklace, or a gold necklace, whichever one you prefer, dwarven armor, dwarven boots, dwarven gauntlets, and a gold or silver ring, all of which enchanted with enchantments that will help you during combat and or keep you alive. I'd like to take a moment to discuss some things that are either required or recommended that don't necessarily fall into the factions section. First off, Lost to the Ages must be completed to gain access to the ethereal shield. This unique weapon will allow you to bash your opponents, sending them into the ethereal plane for 30 seconds and causing them to flee. In order to gain access to the shield, you must complete the quest in its entirety. I also suggest that you purchase a horse from one of the stables in the major cities. It will make all the traveling that you do with the character a whole lot easier. Another huge part of this build is looting and selling. This is your main source of income until you can begin power leveling and enchanting, so it's pretty much essential to do so. It's also another reason you'll need a horse, because you can get over encumbered and then jump on your horse and travel back to the city. I also suggest enchanting a smithing suit and using blacksmith potions that you can purchase from apothecary shops to boost your damage with your scimitar and your armor rating. Finally, I'd keep plenty of health potions and vegetable soup on hand. These will help you a lot during early game combat, and vegetable soup especially will be useful against dragons, allowing you to bash them continuously while your follower or anybody else in the area wails on them with their weapons. And then once you get the dragon down to about half health, you can start slashing away, and it just makes dragon fights way easier. For the final section of this build, I do want to discuss followers. Until you can get to the point where you can get the follower that I'm going to be talking about, I suggest just using any follower that you come across or that you have access to. The only follower that I suggest for this build would be Rhea from Falkreath. She prefers to dual wield weapons, which was perfect for distracting dragons and other tough enemies. I did smith up a set of Creation Club armor called the Stormbearer's Armor and gave it to her, and it has a pretty neat little aesthetic. It kind of matched up well with the Yokudan's Dwarven Armor, so I felt that it fit nicely. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the Yokudan build. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. Be sure to leave your suggestions down below for any builds that you would like to see in the future, and I'll try to get to doing them as soon as possible. Also, in the description down below, I'm going to leave links to various other channels with builds that you may enjoy. Share this build and channel with all your Elder Scrolls loving friends, as this is the only way right now for my channel to grow. As always, remember to be good people, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.